One, Zohran Mamdani, a Democrat socialist who wants to defund the police, create free grocery stores, and everybody rides the bus for free, has won the Democrat primary for mayor in New York City. But what does that mean as we see these radicals take over the left about the future for Democrats? And as an offshoot, we're always an oppositional political system in the United States. So what does it mean for the right? What does it mean for the future of MAGA? 2, Abby Hornacek joins us to rank her top 5 national parks. And 3, Nick Baer on intentionality and brick by brick, how you build your life of success. Will Cain Country, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio, coast to coast, but always available by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. We want you to find us, Will Cain Country and Will Cain Show, on YouTube and on Facebook. From there, you get exclusive content, you get clips, you get the show in its entirety. You also join a member of the community. You become a member of the Willisha. Drop your comments into our live stream or on any video, and we bring you into the show. Not a sermon, but a conversation. We got two-a-days Dan, we got tinfoil Pat, and we have quite a series of events that have led me, as recently as yesterday, between Israel and Iran proclaiming that President Donald Trump not only deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, but also deserves a place on Mount Rushmore. Yesterday, we had that conversation with the author of a brand new book, Not Sick of Winning, Michael Malice. You want to have fun with that conversation? Ask yourself who comes off of Mount Rushmore, who gets recarved. If Rushmores can only be 4 and never 5, and I personally vote for expanding Rushmore to 5, something that makes sense about 5. Every time you say, hey, who's the Mount Rushmore of NFL quarterbacks, you intuitively want to go to 5. You don't want to stop at 4. So why do we stop at 4? Go to 5 on Mount Rushmore.
A lot of controversy online.
What are you talking about?
Online for
about that?
Oh, yeah. A lot of controversy when we posted those clips.
People saying that it's too early.
Yeah.
We're only 1 year and less than 1 year into a second term.
You're an insane person for even suggesting that kind of thing.
I'm an insane person.
So, I don't know. Some people were just saying. I'm just relaying to you.
Here, if you're listening in your car radio, if you have your earbuds in, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, I want you to look directly into my eyes. I want you to look directly into my eyes right now. And this is what I will tell you. I know how this media business works. I've been doing it for a long time. I know how to go viral. I know how to say something controversial. I know the point of provoking an audience. I know the point in accumulating an audience. I've never been very good at it. If you'll notice, my social medias aren't exactly exploding. They're not vibrant. They're not constantly viral. No, we produce content that is centered around the idea of authenticity. I say what I believe. And if I say something that appears to be maximalist or insane or intended for virality, look into my eyes. I promise you, I mean it. Donald Trump belongs on Mount Rushmore. And I'm here to tell you, if you think that's not the case, you're probably somewhere stuck in the loop that he has created. Granted, he has redefined every aspect of our political landscape. He has made everything from left to right about Donald Trump, only in my mind increasing the consequentialism of this presidency. There's, of course, substance as well. Tariffs, free trade, middle class, blue collar, elitism, dovishness on foreign policy, hawkishness on foreign policy, interventionism, isolationism. On every level, he has redefined the way we think about politics. Now, if you think that it's a negative, that he's redefined it in some way that's malicious, well, that's where I think you might be stuck in a loop. But I can't begrudge you your opinion. You feel the way you feel. But know that you are downstream from Donald Trump. We're all downstream from the singular vision of one man, Donald Trump. And in my mind, when this is over, it won't be seen as malicious. It won't be seen as nefarious. It won't be seen as a negative. It will be seen not only as one of the most consequential presidencies in over a half a century, but it will be seen as one of the most important presidencies in the history of America. He belongs on Mount Rushmore. As evidence of that, I continue to give you the incredible events unfolding in Israel and Iran, where in a matter of a couple of hours, he not only took out Iran's nuclear capabilities, but also negotiated peace, at least momentary, but still holding peace between Israel and Iran. Yesterday, reporting emerged, notably from New York Times and CNN, that our bombing campaign in Iran was less successful than led to believe. That, in fact, it only set back Iran's nuclear enrichment program by a few months. It's pretty interesting that these leaks, this information, these reports came from those inside the Defense Intelligence Agency. How would one know at this point? How would one be able to ascertain exactly the extent of our bombing campaign in Iran? We could look at satellite imagery. We might have human intelligence, most likely that human intelligence coming from either Iranians or Mossad, Israeli Mossad. But at this point, we simply don't have a way of knowing. And it makes you wonder about the motivations and the veracity of any leak to CNN or the New York Times. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth took on this story, took on that narrative, took on those motivations yesterday in the Netherlands.
There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons, to try to hurt President Trump or our country. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran.
He went on to say that if you want to know the truth, you're going to have to get a big shovel to dig underneath Fordo. I think it is interesting to get into the details for just one moment. There is several levels to analyze this. There is uranium, enriched uranium reportedly to 60% in Iran. There are centrifuges, which further enrich that uranium from 60% to 90%. There are reactors. And then there's the process of turning enriched uranium into the metallic substance needed to create a weapon, to marshal a bomb. Each one of these critical infrastructures are important to the process of a nuclear Iran. The report never suggested that the entire program had been obliterated, but the key features of the program had been obliterated. And current reporting suggests we bottlenecked several of those moments, the metallic process of turning it into a weapon. It's granted, we still don't know exactly where 60% enriched uranium exists within Iran, how much of it is buried underneath Fordo or Isfahan or Natanz, and what's left of the centrifuges that would increase it from 60% to 90%. But both Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth maintain they have been set back, and as well I heard from General David Petraeus, with some level of confidence, years in their program. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also this morning took on the idea of these leakers. Watch.
They are way behind where they were just 7 days ago. Now, anything in the world can be rebuilt, but now we know where it is. And if they try to rebuild it, we'll have options there as well. But all this leaker stuff, these leakers are professional stabbers. That's what they are. They go out and they read this stuff, and then they tell you what it says against the law, but they characterize it for you in a way that's absolutely false. There's no way Iran comes to the table if somehow nothing had happened. This was complete and total obliteration. They're in bad shape. They are way behind today compared to where they were just 7 days ago because of what the president did.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or on terrestrial radio, it is interesting to watch the face of President Donald Trump as he listens to Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio. I think he can only be described as a face of pride. He smiles. He listens. He beams with pride as they speak. And then he takes to the microphone himself. And he said, by the way, if Iran does begin the process of rebuilding nukes, guess what? Guess what we'll do? You might have seen it over this past weekend. Listen.
If the Iranians do rebuild, would the United States...
If they rebuild?
Would the United States strike again? And I have also a question about Russia.
But I'm not going to have to worry about that. It's gone for years. It's very tough to rebuild because the whole thing has collapsed. In other words, inside, it's all collapsed. Nobody can get in to see it because it's collapsed. You can't go in to see a room that has, 10 million tons of rock in it. And the tunnels are totally collapsed.
But if they rebuild?
Well, they've already looked at the tunnels. This was an unbelievable hit.
And we'll hit them again if they rebuild their nukes. Taking you back to that motivation and that confidence, the report itself, which New York Times and CNN ran with, was on its face and self-admittedly of very low confidence. So why is it the blaring headline? Why is it the blaring headline from CNN and the New York Times? Because it is an attack on Donald Trump. And if that attack requires you at times to accept Iranian intelligence or push Iranian propaganda or wave Iranian flags in the streets of New York or to argue against incredible Rushmorian levels of accomplishment when it comes to peace, well, then that tells you all you need to know about those that are ready to run with that narrative. Here again is President Trump on CNN and MSNBC.
Genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group, and not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally.
There you go. Careful where you get your information. Don't listen to cheerleaders or pom-pom wavers either. And I would hope that that's not the category where I have fallen into. I think I'm objective. I'm not going viral. I'm not trying to be a maximalist. I'm telling you my authentic and honest opinion. You have seen remarkable events over the last 72 hours. Events on their own which demand the Nobel Peace Prize. Events, when combined with the repositioning of our economy, the focus on the blue collar, on the middle class, and the total redefinition of political parties is absolutely and totally Rushmorian. Speaking of the repositioning of political parties, I have a deep conversation I want to get into with you here. And the boys on the staff and the militia with story number 1. Zohran Mamadi, a Democrat socialist, has just won the Democrat nomination for mayor of New York City. What does New York City have to do with you, Buffalo, you, Dallas, you, the state of Washington? What does it have to do with everyone listening here today? Well, it shows a constant, progressive, and consistent march on the left to go further left. Who is Zohran Mamadi? Well, as I mentioned, he is a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist. His proposals in the past have included defunding the police in New York City, creating free grocery stores, government-owned grocery stores, positively Soviet, free bus rides, among many, many other things, such as arresting Benjamin Netanyahu should he set foot in New York City. It is a huge, not just lurch, but leap further left for a city that has, in the past, even elected a guy who was an avowed communist in his past, Bill de Blasio. And I think the interesting conversation is what this means about the future, not just of the left, but of the right. First, let's take a look for a moment at who voted for Zohran Mamadi. This is from the New York Times. This is breaking down the voting blocks, the demos. Let's focus on the neighborhoods first. What you'll see, first of all, in his race against Andrew Cuomo, Cuomo won the Upper West Side and the Upper East Side. Mamadi won other boroughs and neighborhoods by great margins. Bed-Stuy, plus 43% for Mamadi. Crown Heights, plus 25%. Mamadi won Astoria, Williamsburg, Park Slope. Why? What does that mean? Well, You can guess why he won, or rather why he lost the Upper West Side and the Upper East Side. That's a strong Jewish vote against a Muslim who's taken very, very antagonistic stances against Israel. But who did he win? If he didn't win the Jewish vote on the Upper West Side, who did he win in New York City? Well, here's who he won. He won white voters. He lost black voters. He had a small margin of victory with Hispanic voters. He won Asian voters, a massive, by the way, category that includes not just people from East Asian descent, but Pakistan, India. Asia goes all the way, includes the Arabian countries. So it's hard to know exactly who that encompasses when you classify it as Asian. But what's really interesting, not just beyond the demos, is the income levels. This I find absolutely fascinating. I told you he lost with black voters, barely won with Latino voters. Well, you know who he lost with? Poor voters, or those making under $50,000 a year in New York City. Take a look at this. Cuomo won that contingency from 50 to 100,000, or even above 100,000. It goes to Mamdani. He won wealthy, white voters in neighborhoods like Williamsburg and Park Slope. He won, in short, tinfoil, the Brooklyn brunch crew. Now, you've told us all on our calls this morning that's not true. He didn't win, literally, your friends, in the Brooklyn brunch crew. But what we know that he won is educated, wealthy, white women who continue to drive this party further and further left. As someone said, they won't be satisfied until they completely destroy whatever remnants remain of Western civilization. And whether or not that is Brandon Johnson in Chicago or this lady in Los Angeles, a vice mayor in Los Angeles County yesterday, who called on the 18th Street gangs, the Cholos. Literally, she called on the gangsters to stand up against ICE. You have continued and mounting evidence of a further and further leftward leap for Democrats. Now, the likes of James Carville will tell you, no. There's moderates winning in New Jersey, and this place, they're the future of the Democratic Party. But I'm afraid to tell you, those are becoming exceptions and not the rules. The party is increasingly defined by Jasmine Crockett. The party is increasingly defined by AOC. Now, you may take umbrage with that. Oh, those are Fox News clips. That's who you play. No. Zohran Mamadi just won the primary for Democrat in New York City. So, here's what I think. If you think about the future political landscape of America, I think the left is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Meaning, I don't think it's going to play. In a two-party system, you can't go this way and expect to get a governing majority. Not on a national level. Maybe in San Francisco. And then you see the fallout. They're seeing it now in Chicago with the Chicago Tribune's editorial board writing to New Yorkers saying, hey, don't go down this road. We did. Look at our city. But I don't think you're going to get a governing majority in America, making them increasingly irrelevant. Now, I remember, and I want to say this up front, I remember MSNBC in 2012 after Barack Obama's overwhelming win against Mitt Romney saying the future of the Republican Party is over. It's a governing minority. It is Southern white men and nothing more. And they are relegated to permanent minority status. And that blew up in their face spectacularly. So I have some humility about this diagnosis for the future of Democrats. But back to the consequential president, Donald Trump. He is the great question. We just saw a massive divide on the right within MAGA over foreign policy, Israel, Iran, intervention, isolationism. We just saw a massive divide. And the only thing in my mind holding together this coalition is the power and the personality of one man, Donald Trump. I don't know what it looks like afterwards. Is J.D. Vance capable of keeping it all together? Be real. I don't know. I like J.D. Vance, but we cannot overlook the power of Donald Trump. But that same power is also what animates the left. So with no Donald Trump, do they come back to their senses? Do they retreat from insanity? Do they stop lurching and leaping further left? I don't know. This is why he is so consequential. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But let's for a moment presume, before I bring you guys in, tinfoil, before I bring you in two-a-days, let's for a moment presume they can't. You've gone too far. And any rational lefty or even any coalition of MAGA that you could currently look at and go, wow, maybe in the future they could be called Democrats. Say MAGA split. We're still a two-party system, and we have been for 150 years. So we're not going to be a European parliament. Even if we factionalize off, and I do think, as I talked to Michael Malice about, factions are the biggest maybe possibility / probability and problem for the future of America. It's what the founders worried about. Read the Federalist Papers. They were concerned not about parties, but about factions. They weren't concerned about ideology. They were concerned about factions. Groups of people voting in their own self-interest, cohesively identifying through some small thing that brings them together. Obviously, the most obvious historical pattern is race. And we hope that's not the future of America. But factions in some form or fashion look to be a possibility, if not a probability. Still, we have a two-party system and always have. At least the last 150 years. We don't have a parliament. So it's designed and built for either or. 1 versus 2. Black versus white. A versus B. That's how it's built. So what is the future of Democrats? Is it some faction of the MAGA movement that goes, I don't like where this is headed. I'm not here. I'm dovish. I'm isolationist. I go to the left. Or I go to Democrats, even if it's not that much of a step to the left. I don't know. Wokeism is a problem. So for the left not to be permanent irrelevance, they'd have to step away from things like insane wokeness, right? And that doesn't seem to be possible. My point is, if it's just Donald Trump that they're a reaction to, there's a point at which you've gone too far and there's no coming back into your insanity. And if that's the case, it's over for Democrats. And your future Democrat Party will be some factionalization, some split among the right. I don't know. Maybe when Donald Trump is not center stage, the left comes back to its senses. But I think it's pretty fascinating to think about the future, and I'm pretty certain it doesn't look a lot like the past. Go ahead, 2 days.
No, like I told you before, with the Brooklyn Brunch crew, the Democrat friends I have, they are kind of getting away from the woke side of things and going a little more towards the moderate middle. And the only underlying thing, like you said, is Donald Trump. They just can't get over it. So no matter what, there's no common ground between Republicans and Democrats when that's the case. They just can't see past it. They won't see past it.
Okay, so take that element out of the equation. Take out Donald Trump.
They're moderate.
My concern.
They're middle of the road.
My concern for the Brooklyn Brunch crew is they are consensus driven. They are acceptability driven. They are Overton window driven. And then over the last 5 years, that acceptability included BLM. That acceptability included tearing down statues. That acceptability included transgenderism. That acceptability included COVID fear-mongering. That's not acceptable today. And so they shift with that Overton window. But if you have a Zohan Mamradi making it acceptable once again, I'm afraid the Brooklyn Brunch crew is untethered from reason. Is it Donald Trump? Is that the only reason they're untethered? It is a good argument, and it's not one I'm willing to dismiss. When you wake up one day and you are against peace, when you wake up one day and you're waving an Iranian flag, you got to look in the mirror and go, man, my hate is really driving me into some bad places. My hatred of Donald Trump is driven me into some really ugly places. I'm concerned for your friends, for the Brooklyn Brunch crew, for the left.
Sam.
That this ship doesn't find its way back to harbor. Go ahead, Tinfoil.
Oh, I just don't know if the Democrat Party can be claimed by any remnant group because they've consolidated so much power in order to try to stay away from the Bernie Sanders types. I think that you're looking, we've talked about it a long time with Ross Perot. I think you're looking at potentially a third party. We're not going to get fractionalized like Europe, but I think that you're going to start seeing a rise in that kind of alternative at some point.
You know, and everybody says that. And by the way, I think there's a real deep conversation that post-Donald Trump, you do have to consider the future of the MAGA movement. But the third-party way has been something talked about for so long. And it's just our system is not built that way. Our system is built for either or, A or B, 1 versus 2. And I don't think 1 and 2, Republicans and Democrats, look anything in the future like they looked like in the past. Welcome, New York City, to Zohran Mamdani. What are the top 5 national parks? Let's break it down with the host of Parked on Fox Nation, Abby Hornacek, next on Will Cain Country. Brick by brick. That's the path to success, says the author of a brand new book. Go one more. Nick Bear coming up on Will Cain Country, streaming live at foxnews.com on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Set reminders and join us every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, or subscribe at Apple or on Spotify and listen and hang whenever you like. The Will Cain one man, two hats extravaganza is running on the Fox News channel, and I hear it during the commercial breaks at times here on Will Cain Country. I thought I might share a little bit from the Willisha right here. Here's Angry Mama Bear over on X. She tweets to Lawrence Jones, "What did those Yankees do to our boy Will Cain in his new commercial for his shows? He wears a Stetson with dress shoes and makes him do a weird tip with his ball cap? Oh, hell no." And then Danielle Jones on X says, "I listen to the TV show on SiriusXM and download the radio show as a podcast. I travel for work. I just caught the commercial on the DVR. I was going to call it cheesy, but the eye sparkle won me over. Keep having fun. We connect with your authenticity." Thank you, Danielle. Boys, I mean, we do have to at some point address this. We're going to have to break this thing down. I think we're going to have to play the commercial, one man, two hats. Heart of the Matter from Heart of America on the show and break it down. I think we have to.
Okay.
I think we have to. I think we owe it to our audience. I think that it can be like a therapy session in a way, you know?
We'll see what our next guest has to say about it.
Well, our next guest came down to Texas last week, and she was wearing cowboy boots, and she suggested to me for her show Ride to Work on Fox Nation that she wanted to ride a horse into work. And I don't really know. I don't know how serious that suggestion was or not.
Serious.
But we're going to have to deal. We're going to have to deal with the Texas image from the New York perspective, because sooner or later, you Fox people are going to turn me into Howdy Doody. I'm going to have to be careful here. You know, I live in a metropolis, Abby. I live in Dallas.
Hold on, Will. I got to cut you off. Because I'm not coming from a New York perspective. I'm coming from an Arizona perspective. We do ride horses in Arizona, and you ride horses in Texas. Don't pretend. I know you're in Dallas.
Not to work.
I know, but I thought we could have fun. I didn't think you actually rode a horse to work, but I think you should.
Abby Hornacek, the host of Fox Nation, is here with us on Will Cain Country. When I went to college in California, when I went to Pepperdine, I remember sitting at the lunch table and people genuinely asking me, "Hey, do you ride a horse to school? Like, what is it?" Like,
I think they were messing with you.
I don't think they were, Abby. I don't think they were. I think this, like, Texas. How many pairs? I saw you in your cowboy boots. How many pairs of cowboy boots do you have, Abby?
I have 4 to 5 pairs of cowboy boots.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
nice.
I do love, and it is not a costume, like you have said before. It is real.
Thank you.
I wear my cowboy boots when I go horseback riding, when I'm on a ranch, when I go to the rodeos, things like that. But I'm surprised that, did you have frosted tips in college because you played water polo?
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm surprised maybe you wore a cowboy hat to cover the frosted tips. Who knows?
My culture is not your costume. I've been wanting to say that. Now I get to really say that. I didn't have frosted tips, but I will, in all self-awareness and honesty with you and the audience, tell you that every time I've moved outside of Texas, whether or not that be California, Montana, or New York, my Texan gets turned up a little bit. You know, it gets turned up. You think so? As it should?
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe come to New York.
I think that's also
Mamdani.
cliche.
Yeah, I think we could turn up the Texas here in New York a little bit after the election.
I remember going to this bar in Malibu, California, wearing Wranglers. Back then, they made some loose fit Wranglers. They still do, but this was at the front end of the loose fit Wranglers, and you know, I had some of those, and I had like a bright, like I didn't have a brush popper on, but it was a starched, bold striped shirt, and I remember getting made fun of at a bar. I do. I remember somebody saying, "I didn't know Wranglers made baggy jeans." That's like,
that'll stick with you.
I gotta. All right, Abby Hornacek is here. She is the host of Parked on Fox Nation. I told Abby, we did this the other day on social media. I don't know that it's been posted, but I did ask Abby. First of all, she rides horses. She's a woman of adventure, and she does this as part of her series. She's done it in some incredible places. And shockingly, I think this is a true statement. The national parks of America are a, if not hidden, underappreciated gem of this country. Gems which I have had the privilege and pleasure to go see many of them, but not like you, Abby. I love it. I love going to the national parks. And have you seen them all? You haven't seen them all. How many have you seen?
You know what? I'm funny you asked this question because this morning I was thinking about it because I don't have an official count, but I believe it's around 45, 46.
Really?
We have 63, so we've got a ways to go, which, I'm happy that I haven't seen them all because that means we can keep hopefully doing parks. But, I think the way that you describe their national parks is so accurate. I know that people know about the parks. Obviously, they always say, oh, I want to go out in nature. But our country has such varied nature and topography, and I think this season in particular really showcases the biodiversity of what we have. You can go to a lush rainforest in the Pacific Northwest at Olympic National Park. You could go to the Badlands of South Dakota, and you could travel to one of the most remote national parks in our country in Dry Tortugas, where you can only access it by boat or seaplane. So we have so many things we can do, and I don't know how people haven't been.
It's incredible. That is okay. Of the 20 some odd left to do that you have not yet visited, what do you think's the biggest one? Like, what's left on the checklist that you'd go, I can't believe I haven't been to this one yet? Can you name that?
Oh.
Have you been to Big Bend in Texas?
Have not been to
you
Big
done
Bend.
Big Bend?
That is a big one. Pun intended. Yes, that's a huge one that we have not been to, and I think Texas has so much to offer, and I would like to see it. So that it's a little hard to get to, so I think we'll do that. We're starting to plan season 9, and it might make its way into season 9. So you'll have to watch season 8 first, and then potentially Big Bend. But I'm trying to think of, there are some in Alaska. We've done Denali, which I really wanted to hit in Alaska, and Kenai Fjords National Park, both in Alaska. But there are 6 there. So some of them are super, super remote that it's hard to travel with a TV show. But I'm trying to think. We've got to hit the Hawaii one still. It's a little far from New York, so we're trying to get behind that one. But we've hit a ton of them, like the big ones, Yosemite, Zion,
Right.
all the parks in Utah, which I know you've traveled around with your family as well. So the ones on the West Coast and like the Southwest really are so different than you get on the East Coast because you have all this red rock and it's been eroded. It's hard to imagine that all these desert landscapes were once covered by water.
Right. So do you get into that, Abby? You get into a lot of the history and the story. So, like, for example, you do Big Bend. First of all, you've got to ride the canyons of the Rio Grande. You got to ride a boat through the canyons, a raft through hope that the water is high enough, and do that. I think you get into also, like, I don't know how you avoid the Mexican drug cartel stuff, Pancho Villa. A lot has happened in these areas where they're with the overlap of Mexico and the United States historically, beyond simply the natural features of it, but the stories that are integrated into so many of these natural parks, I find fascinating. So, for example, to your point, when I went from ESPN to Fox, I told you the story, Abby. I believe it was about a 2-month lag between my last day at ESPN and my first day at Fox, and it was during COVID. And we wanted to take some time as a family, and we were living in Tennessee, close to the Smoky Mountains, and in the Smoky Mountains during COVID. And then so we drove throughout the South. We did like Civil War battlefields like Vicksburg. We stopped at the Bonnie and Clyde Museum in Louisiana, came on over to Texas, and then went straight up. And we did Rushmore. We went to Montana, but we didn't do Glacier.
Did you do Badlands
and I
when
regret
you were
that.
at Mount Rushmore?
No, because I just didn't. It was,
out.
there was a bit of a schedule to stay on everything. I regret it because it's just
what,
a little
Will?
east.
You
of
should regret
Rushmore.
it, but you know what? You can watch it in season 8 of Parked.
Yes. And by the way, yes, we're not going to forget to promote this entire thing is about watching Parked on Fox Nation. That the Badlands are really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, really cool and otherworldly. And that's the thing in the end. Everything is otherworldly. But what I was getting at is the otherworldliness of Utah is what blew me away. I knew the famous ones. I'd been to Yellowstone several times. I've never been to Yosemite, but I've read and seen a lot about Yosemite. You know the famous ones. But then I get to Utah. I had never given credit to it. And I actually loved the history of, like, Butch Cassidy
Yes.
and the outlaw gangs that hid out in these places in southern Utah. I don't know. I love the history and the stories that are part of these parks as well.
Well, that's what I do highlight that a lot. I love talking about the geological history, but also the human history, because the way that in a place like Big Bend or Badlands that, people had to learn how to survive when they're voyaging over and trying to survive. I remember we did some in Arizona, and you've got Grand Canyon, Petrified Forest National Park. And when we were doing Petrified Forest, I learned that the Native Americans used to use cacti. There's a thing called the jumping cactus. I don't know if you have those in Texas, but basically if you get close enough to it, it sort of shoots its like a little ball of spikes at you, and it can get stuck in your skin. Happened to my dad once. But the Native Americans learned that they could take fire and burn off the spikes on the cactus. They cut it open. It has as much vitamin C as an orange. So they would eat it, and then as a weapon for anyone coming in, they would use catapults, and they would throw them at anybody who was trying to come into their camps. So I love to hear how people make use of the land. And it's, we were Crater Lake National Park. We were night kayaking. And we were learning that, the beavers, how they build a dam, right? Like with sticks and mud. Early people, when they were settling the land, they observed the animals and saw what resources they were using, and then they started implementing that in their own lives. So we learn from nature, and then we have to adapt to it. And now it's, people make their home in all sorts of places. And I just think that's so fascinating.
Absolutely. Okay, I've asked Abby today, give us her top 5 national parks so far. But I do want to ask you this, because one of my favorite things about that trip was the discovery part of this. I'm glad that I went to Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. It wasn't on my list. I didn't know much about it. And then I loved it, right? So, in your mind, of the 40 some odd parks that you've already been to, what do you feel like is the most underappreciated? Or if you're talking to somebody and everybody wants to talk about Yellowstone and Yosemite, and you're like, yeah, but this one right here, this is a huge value buy. Nobody goes, or people don't go enough and don't know how cool this particular park is.
I'm going to point to one in Utah, which I feel like I shouldn't do because all of them are so spectacular, but I have to say Capitol Reef National Park. Season 4 of Parks, we did a road trip and rented an RV, and my parents came along, which was really fun. We hit a bunch of the ones in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. Capitol Reef was everyone's favorite of all of them because we hadn't known much about it. It's, the least visited national park in Utah, but talk about otherworldly. You feel like you're on Mars. We hiked with llamas because llamas, talking about the human history, were used a lot to carry goods across this rugged terrain. And there's a thing called the Water Pocket Fold, which is basically a fold in the earth. So the kind of ecosystems that you get around that is just something that you don't see across other places in the country. And yeah, you have Zion, Bryce Canyon, like you mentioned, spectacular. You can see how nature has eroded away and really is an architect. And that's what I think each national park offers something different because the way time has passed and shaped these places, you could go to a national park 5 years ago, it's going to look completely different 5 years from now because it's, we have that nature as an architect. So I've got to say Capitol Reef.
And I will tell you, just from my own personal trips, I did 2 different things, which I think add to it. One, at Zion and Yellowstone, I stayed at a place, it's a business called Under Canvas, where you stay in
I love
really
Under Canvas.
tents.
I've stayed at, both of those.
Glamping. It's glamping.
It is.
But it's awesome. It's a nice, walled tent with beds and heaters, and you're going to have a cocktail looking out over it. Spectacular landscaping. But the other thing I like to do is I actually like the human part of the national parks as well, meaning I like Old Faithful Lodge at Yellowstone. You walk in, you feel like Teddy Roosevelt built this thing. I like going to Grand Canyon and staying on the rim. And I can't remember the name of the famous old hotel right there on the rim of Grand Canyon, but I love those they were all probably built about the same time, which feels like 1930s, maybe work projects, administration projects, but I love going into those old hotels. Not every national park has them, but those that do, I think that's a cool part of the experience.
Yeah, you think about the type of people who have been through of all generations. And I think about this in Yosemite. There's an overlook. You said you haven't been to Yosemite, right?
No.
There's an overlook called Glacier Point, and it's, of all the national parks, it's one of the best overlooks you can go to. And what I find fascinating is back in the day, to get up there, you couldn't just drive your car. They would use a horse-drawn carriage. And I'm thinking about these poor horses who are trying to lug these people up there. And the fact that we have such accessibility now, and you know, people from, like, John Muir walked those steps, and all the iconic naturists and people like that. But then you meet folks, like, if you go to a national park, I always say it's the happiest people. You talk about Democrats, Republicans so much in today's world. Doesn't matter when you're at the parks because everyone's just having a good time. They're enjoying nature. You don't know what people's political views are. And I mean, minus some things like Yosemite, I know it puts up some stuff. But when you're there, you don't feel that effect. We have people come up to us like who have maybe watched the show or something. And there was a woman who had told us that she was celebrating her foot-iversary. And I was like, what is that? And she goes, I had cancer in my foot. And they said that they had to amputate me from my knee down. And I, by the grace of God, was able to beat the cancer. They didn't have to amputate my leg. And now I go to a new national park every year to celebrate the fact that I can walk. And that story really hit me because, you know, we take so much for granted. And the fact that we can take in this just gorgeous nature and see, you know, what God really has done with our country, it's a good reminder to be grateful.
All right, top 5 national parks now with Abby. We'll go through them fairly quickly, Abby, but I want you to tell us in the course of you giving us your top 5, from 5 to 1, what season of Parked also your list can be found. So, if you can remember.
That's, I don't know if I can remember.
8 seasons of Parked. Let's see if you can. But go ahead. Let's start with what comes in at number 5.
Oh, gosh. You know, I just want to caveat this really quickly that my list constantly changes depending on what time of the year, what's family-friendly, things like that. So I'll start with...
The parks don't have feelings.
They do, actually. They tell me all the time. Number 5, I'm going to say, oh, gosh. I'm going to put Capitol Reef there, which I know we already talked about.
Oh.
So because it's so underrated, I love that one. Are you going to give your top 5 or you just want me to go through my top?
I want you to go through, but I'm going to call them out. So number 5, Capitol Reef, which suggests that the top 4 is going to be pretty good because that was her most underappreciated park and one of her favorites. So I can't wait to hear. Now number 4.
I'm going to go with Glacier National Park because I am an animal lover and you can see all sorts of wildlife here. And it's really interesting how glaciers have carved out the big, long valleys of Glacier. So a lot of really great activities too.
In Montana, one of my great regrets, lived in Montana for a year, never went to Glacier. Huge mistake.
Yes.
All right, Glacier comes in at number 4. Number 3.
Also, quick, Lake McDonald, best place to skip rocks, and I love skipping rocks. So, number 3 is going to be Yosemite, which, you know, people will get mad at me that I didn't put this as number 1, but I think, you know, so many people go to Yosemite, and there's a reason why. We did the Half Dome hike, it was about 19 miles, and then you get to the top, and there's those cables. It's one of the most dangerous hikes in the country, but it is so worth it because you can feel what it's like to be on, you know, this big rock face that has been shaped over time. So the granite domes, the cascading waterfalls, every single overlook at Yosemite is top notch.
And by the way, I think that these are all active, physical, as you have been when you're doing the show. You got to hike. You got to raft. You got to see these parks beyond just the places where you get out of the car. I think that's when you really take it all in. All right, what's number 2?
Zion. Gotta go with Zion. If I could put all the Utah parks on here, I would. You know, you got the sheer verticality of these sandstone cliffs, and of course you've heard of the Narrows, an incredible hike, but you feel so small when you're there because everything is red and it's gorgeous, and Angel's Landing offers, every year it erodes away. So if you're going to go now. But it's
interesting you bring that up because everybody thinks of the Narrows when they think of Zion. And I hiked the Narrows, and it's long. The Narrows is a long hike up. You hike up the river, so you're in water, and you got to wear waders during the hike and that kind of thing. And you're on River Rock, and there are times when it's really shallow. There's times when it's up to your hip, honestly, and it can flood. But you are sheer verticality cliffs on both sides. But you love Zion beyond the Narrows?
I do, because there's so much that it has to offer. People think of that, but Angel's Landing and so many other hikes that are kind of hidden gems too. It's one of those ones where, yeah, you go to the overlooks, but just exploring the national park, you find ones that aren't on the map. And I love parks like that because the overlooks get quite crowded, but that's a place that you can see good views from anywhere.
All right, here we go. Drumbeat. And number 1, according to Parks, Abby Hornacek.
I am going to go with Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, and I have to, again, caveat because this list constantly changes. I had a personal, just spectacular experience at Kenai Fjords. That's why I'm going to put it as number 1. Alaska is just so different from anything that I've seen. You have 38 glaciers, active glaciers still descending from the mountaintops in Kenai Fjords. And there's really one glacier that is accessible, Exit Glacier. So this is why I have to tell people you have to go with an adventure company. But what we did was we put on crampons, we hiked onto Exit Glacier, and then they lowered us into a crevasse and we got to ice pick our way out. And then there's another glacier called Bear Glacier. You go to Bear Glacier Lagoon and you can actually kayak where there are icebergs. And I just learned things there that I didn't know before. Like, this is probably dumb of me. I didn't realize you can't get right next to an iceberg if it's in the water because at any point it can capsize. And of course, we've all seen that graphic of like the amount of ice that's under the water. And then you only see I want to say 15% of the iceberg. So if it capsizes, it's just going to take you right down underneath. So I would say that is so different than anything I've experienced being from Arizona, living, in New York and Chicago and all over the place. So I would have to put Kenai Fjords as number 1.
Great list. Great list. No Yellowstone, no Grand Canyon.
I was thinking about the fact I left Yellowstone off. I don't want to get canceled, so I'm gonna put that as an honorable mention. But it is. It's, you know what? Yellowstone is up there, but I think it's because we see it so often that it's not on my list because I don't know. But obviously Old Faithful and it smells like sulfur.
But
that's.
But it's a testament to how cool all these other parks actually are, I think. The Yellowstone didn't make your top 5. And it's also a testament to you being able to see at least some of this cathartically through Abby and Parked on Fox Nation. Badlands and many more on season 8. But there's 8 seasons there, 43 parks. Highlighted a lot of them right there. You should go check it out at Fox Nation. Always great to hang with you. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks for having me, Will.
All right, go one more. The author of a brand new book, Nick Bare, on Brick by Brick, Building Your Life into Success. Next on Will Cain Country. Will Cain Country. Streaming live at foxnews.com, Fox News YouTube, Fox News Facebook, Spotify, and Apple. We began today's conversation talking about the future of the left and the future of the right. Zohran Mamdani winning the Democrat primary for mayor in New York City. Will the left come back to its senses post-Donald Trump? Will it follow people like Mamdani into not just further left, but into increasing irrelevance? Well, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, just posted on X, I have known Zohran Mamdani since we worked together to provide debt relief for thousands of beleaguered taxi drivers and fought to stop a fracked gas plant in Astoria. He ran an impressive campaign that connected with New Yorkers about affordability, fairness, and opportunity. He just endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor in New York. That's about as establishment as it gets. Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, endorsing the lurch, the leap, not just to the left, but in my mind, when it comes to a national coalition, into further irrelevance. Go one more. Find the clarity to make intentional, life-changing choices. That's the name of a brand new book, written by Nick Bare. He's on YouTube. He's got a huge following on YouTube. And he talks to us today about this new book and how you can, brick by brick, build success. What's up, Nick?
Will, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
You bet, man. Glad to have you. Let's talk a little bit about your book, Go One More. So I've been on a pretty good roll here, Nick, getting to the gym, Vanity is a hell of a motivator. I got to be shirtless on national television come August to do the New York City Navy SEAL swim. So I gotta get in shape. And my buddy who I'm training with is always like, go one more, man. Go one more. Like complete failure. You can squeeze one more out. And so when I was thinking about and reading about your book, you take that whole idea, that one little thing, and you talk about how it applies to every single thing that we're doing, every single habit, every single step towards success. One more. That's how you build success.
So it's these small incremental decisions we make that I believe compound over time. And for me, I want to share the story of Go One More because I think it's very meaningful. And the book that I wrote, Go One More, is about the evolution of those three simple words, where I used to believe Go One More was just an action. And now I believe that it is part of what Go One More is, but Go One More is much greater than that. It's actually an outcome that we can achieve by making very intentional, life-changing choices. It's not just doing more of everything all the time for any reason. It's doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons that's going to shift the trajectory of your life. But the foundation and founding story of Go One More, I mean, I have it tattooed on my arm. There's thousands of other people who have it tattooed on their arms and bodies as well now. I was training for my first marathon in 2018. And before that, I was in the Army. I ran a lot when I was in the Army. When I got out of the military, I literally said I will never run a day in my life again. And then a year later, I'm signed up for a marathon. And since then, I've done ultra marathons, 100-mile races, Ironmans. But I was training for my first marathon. I had an 18-mile run on the schedule for that day, which was the longest I would have ever run up until that point. I was 10 miles into this run. I quit on that run. I started walking back to the apartment that my wife and I were renting at the time. And as I'm walking back to the house, the apartment, I'm thinking to myself, if I quit on this run, what else will I quit on in my life? Will I quit on my business? Will I quit on my family? Will I quit on my team? And through some of that self-reflection, I walked back to the trail, living in Austin, Texas at the time. So there's this beautiful Lady Bird Lake, Town Lake Loop around Austin, Texas. And I went back to the trail. I finished the 18-mile run. I ran one additional mile. I ran 19 miles that day. Came back to the house, wrote one more under the bill of my hat, took a photo of it, posted on social media, and it went nuts. It went wild. All these other people started writing it on the bill of their hat, taking a photo of it, posting it. And that then evolved into what is now Go One More. I realized I struck a nerve in people. And that has become the foundation of my business, but also the mission of my life. And I've applied it to every aspect. So that's why I say it's much more than just an action. It's an outcome that I think we can all achieve if we do more of the right things.
What do you mean you looked into with this book each and every one of those words individually? Go one more. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, to your point, it's a phrase. It's not just an action. It's a. I don't want to diminish it to the concept of a mantra, but tell me a little more about what you mean by you're looking into it piece by piece.
I mean, Go One More, it's very simple to understand. But I have this chapter in the book that talks about the difference between simple and easy, right? And I used to think that simple and easy were synonyms, and I've come to realize that they're not. I was just reading this section on the way here, actually, in the book, and Albert Einstein has these 5 ascending levels of intelligence, and the highest level of intelligence is simple. So Go One More itself, they are 3 simple individual words that we can all understand. I mean, if you tell someone to go one more, it is very easy to take those words and put them into action. But just because they are simple does not mean it is easy. To show up every single day and to apply that to every part of your life, to keep going one more. I mean, the power in that is absolutely remarkable. And I don't use the word remarkable often because I believe, and I've heard this from Seth Godin before, an incredible entrepreneur, author, and leader. The difference between very good and remarkable is extreme. When you apply Go One More, very simply, and that compounds over time, it produces remarkable results in your life. And I have been one to experience those remarkable results for myself.
What are those results? What have you experienced?
I mean, if I think back to my childhood, I grew up in central Pennsylvania. Dad's side of the family were dairy farmers. Mom's side of the family, a lot of them were in the military. My mom was in education, special education specifically. The ceiling for what I thought I could achieve in my life was so limited based off of just my environment. And then I realized that one of my strengths and powers is just being extremely consistent. And that over time has led me to building the business that I run now. I mean, when I started my business in 2012, I took a $20,000 loan out with a military associated bank, USAA. I told my dad we were going to make $1 million that first year. He said, Nick, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. And year one, we did $20,000 in revenue. Year two, we did $20,000 in revenue. Year three, we did $20,000 in revenue. It took us 5 years to struggle to get to 7 figures. And just getting to 7 figures was an absolutely brutal awakening of realizing and learning the hardship of cash flow for a product-based business. But now getting that business to, where we're at today, profitable, about 45 full-time employees. I've applied the consistency and lessons of going more to not only my business, but my physical accomplishments, building a family, leading a team and family, happily married. I have a almost 3-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son. And it's just, as my life has grown and you could argue become more complicated and responsibilities have increased, applying the simple application of go one more has, I believe, guided me into success that I believe is success.
How did you realize that one of your superpowers was consistency?
Honestly, I never was at a moment where I said, I'm going to be a very consistent person. I think that was part of what I learned growing up from both sides of my family. I think that was just built into my bloodline and DNA. But it was probably 2018 where one of my employees who still works with us today, great friend, Jordan Utter, he recognized the fact that of all the things I'm working towards, he believes he believed back then my greatest characteristic and skill was just my ability to be extremely consistent. And my running coach, Jeff Cunningham, he has this quote that I absolutely love, and I quoted him in the book. And he says, it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. And if you look at the most successful people, they're not the ones that are going to throw the Hail Mary pass every single day or knock it out of the park with every business deal they go after. But day in and day out, they are applying this ruthlessly consistent application to every part of their life. Being consistently good as opposed to occasionally great will lead you to where I believe you want to be. It might take much longer. It's not going to be a week, a month, a year from now. But I mean, if I look at my business, I am now 13 years into building my brand, and there was never or not very oftenly the occasionally great, but it's 13 years of being very consistently good.
Okay. I got a lot of things I want to follow up on. Did you play sports growing up?
I did, but I was never a stud athlete. I played sports. I played baseball. I played ice hockey, but I was never the stud student. Did
you see these characteristics in yourself as a young athlete? Like you were consistent, you were very good or good, not occasionally great, but it also paid off. I'm curious if these habits began to build at all through that, or even if they didn't build through that, did they illustrate themselves at all in that young formative experience in life?
I wouldn't say with sports or when I was younger, you wouldn't be able to look at me and say, Nick was extremely consistent in anything or X, Y, and Z. But when I was younger, I had a lot of passions that were driven by curiosity. I'd say I was entrepreneurial since I was younger. And then I went to college. I went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship. I was studying nutrition at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And I believe that's where the consistency really started to build. It was my exposure to a military environment. It was my true passion and interest in training, in exercise, and in performance. And then when I started my business when I was in college, that's where I was so passionate about what I was doing that consistency wasn't something I had to wake up and choose to do. It was just something that I did.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that consistency had to be attached to something that you are passionate about, and once you cared about it, it was easier to establish that consistency. It's this thing where, and I struggle with it myself. So like, people say, should you choose your passions in life? Should you choose what you're good at, which are not often the same thing? What you're passionate about and what you're good at are not the same things. And then the path to success, right? Is life about hitting home runs or is it about racking up singles? And I've gone back and forth on that because I'll be honest with you, Nick, I'm motivated by the home run. Like I wake up motivated. As I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate, compound interest and concepts like being, Tony Gwynn, which was hitting singles and singles and singles until you're in the Hall of Fame, consistently, to your point. Learning to value the small victories. But I just can't figure out, even with myself yet, if I need the concept of the home run to continue to grind out the singles. I need to see that there is a big moment, a payoff, or is it you just wake up one day and you're like, the singles added up, man. The singles added up to something, as you pointed out, remarkable.
Well, I think you put yourself in a position to hit the home runs when, if we're putting this into baseball context right now, the athlete who shows up every day and doesn't miss batting practice and is showing up on time, putting in the reps, taking care of their training, their recovery, they might be very consistently hitting singles, but when they're put in the position with the perfect pitch in the right scenario, they are primed to hit that home run. As opposed to the person who strikes out 9 out of 10 times, hits the one home run occasionally. I'd rather someone who's getting successful singles hits a home run as opposed to the person who's striking out and getting home runs.
Yeah. The other part of this is that I think that we as people are conditioned to be able to accept punishment. We're able to accept pain. And we're even able to at times be patient if we can see progression. That was a lot of P's. That was a really interesting alliteration I just strung together. But the point is, if you see progress, you can continue going, right? And what I like about the story you told us about your business is that the first 5 years, I think you rattled off at least 3 to 5 years, it was 20,000, 20,000, 20,000. After telling your dad it would be $1 million in the first year. Now, if you were getting 20,000, then 70,000, then 150, you could continue to tell yourself, I'm on the right path, I'm progressing, I can keep struggling, I can keep fighting. There's got to be, during that, let's call it stagnant period, right, of 2020, 2020, when it's like, I don't know, man. Should I cut bait and try something else, right? Is the consistency leading towards remarkable?
And there's a few things there. One, it's how are you measuring success along the way? Like subjectively and objectively, if revenue at that time was the only thing I was using to measure success, I would have been losing the entire time. But at that same time, I was measuring success in other ways. What was I doing in the background of building the brand and setting the business up for the future to ensure that when we were ready for growth, we could go and achieve it. One of my favorite books is it's by Tim Grover. It's called Winning. Tim Grover was the trainer for Kobe and Michael Jordan. He talks about building confidence over time. And he says to build confidence, you have to go after this first win. So that your first win in life is going to be challenging. And it doesn't matter what that first win is. Maybe that first win is graduating high school or graduating college or your first big promotion or you sell your first business. It's all relative. To get that first win, it requires a lot of effort. And after you get that first win, it feels really good. You build some confidence. And then after that, you probably set a larger goal, and that larger goal requires more work, more effort. But when you finally achieve it, which will probably come from with some failures, accompanied by failures, you build more and more confidence. So if I look at my life, I'm sure you can do the same and others as well. We've built all of this confidence over decades of time because we've set goals. We've made a plan. We went to accomplish them, might have missed, eventually got it, built confidence. Next goal, went after it, built confidence. And you do this over years and years and years. The amount of confidence you can build over decades is absolutely amazing.
Right. If you're able to accomplish these habits and able to accomplish this consistency, which is a self-described superpower, there is something else out there, and it's like it's easy. The easy analogy is poker. Is do you chase bad hands, right? And do you continue to put good money on top of bad money? That's another thing people talk about when it comes to investments, right? I think I have a similar mindset to you, not the same, similar in some ways of I don't like quitting. And I am, as it turns out, capable of grinding. But I have at times wondered, hey, maybe you should reevaluate everything. You know what I mean? Maybe you should step back. Are you putting good money on top of bad? Do you think that has been something you have to balance? How do you balance that drive? You even write in here identity, right? Grit is an identity. I get that. It is. But I think there are times, and I don't have a good example. Everyone has to ask it of their own personal life where it's like, you know, you have turned not quitting, the proverbial you, not you, Nick, but you have turned quitting into a religious proposition. And you have to really ask yourself if you can continue to chase something that your whole grit is pushing you towards. You know, there's another angle to this. And also, make sure you want what it produces. I've always asked myself that as well. Because I'm that way, make sure you want the success this produces, because it does produce a certain kind of success. Do you want that payoff? I just wonder sometimes about the self-evaluation process while you're in this grind.
I mean, I think you can't have this conversation without asking those questions. Because if you're working towards something that you actually don't want or you're not interested in anymore, and you're doing it because you believe you have to be committed to it because you said you were going to do it, it's okay to stop doing that. There's this thing I talk about in the book, and I quote Lewis Howes. It's called identity foreclosure. The example is, say when you were younger and you decided you wanted to be a doctor, and that's what you told everyone you were going to go to do. And then you went through all the schooling, and you spent 10 to 12 years in the schooling, and you finally become a doctor, and you realize when it's time to become a doctor, I actually don't want to do this anymore. But you feel obligated to because you told everyone you were going to and you committed to it. I think it would be foolish to spend the next 20 to 30 years of your life being a doctor if you don't want to be a doctor. In that moment, decide to quit and go do something else. You know, there's been times where I've stopped doing what I was working towards, and I thought I had to have this grand explanation of why, and the reality was I just don't feel like it anymore. I'm not passionate or interested in it. And if you're doing something you're not passionate or interested in, it's okay in certain situations and circumstances to pivot and go towards something else. I'm not saying every single time you decide I don't want to do this anymore, you just quit and stop. There is a time and place to continue pushing through the obstacles and resistance. But in certain situations, there has to be a level of awareness of, I'm not going to pursue this anymore because it's not worth my time, money, or effort.
And that's why you bring up early in the book, you talked about here, intentionality.
Yeah.
Like, give some thought to what it is you're about to put grit into. Also, by the way, just as we're kind of struggling through this, or I am, there is by the way, does anyone ever who's your doppelganger? I'm just sitting here looking at you, talking to you, and I got it right there. I mean, it's dead ringer. And so you're going to say it 100%. Who do people tell you look like?
No one. I never get that question.
Come on, Nick.
Never. Who do you think? Who do you think I look like?
2 days. Can you see it?
I don't see it
do you
yet.
See it?
I don't see it yet.
Well,
is it an athlete? Is it an athlete?
No, it's an actor, and he's in person with you. He's not in person with me, and he's wearing this hat. So maybe it's different without the hat. Dude looks like Ryan Gosling. I'm not trying to like.
I see it.
Make him. You do see it?
Same face shape. You're right. Yeah.
Wow, I appreciate
Yes.
that. That's a compliment.
Yeah, I know.
Thank
It's
you.
such a huge compliment that I don't want to say it out loud. It makes me extremely suspect. But you got it, man. You look like
Uncomfortable.
I'm gonna rip this clip and use
dude
it.
looks like Gosling. I don't know if you look that way without the hat. Never take it off. See what happens for you. You said you're married, so
The
I
hat's,
don't know
the
what
hat's
that's gonna
always
do
on.
for you.
It's always on.
Okay, intentionality. Paralysis by analysis. That's another thing. Like, oh, he's stuck in this state of what it is I am gonna do. I'm gonna devote myself. I'm gonna grind. I'm gonna have this grit. But I gotta figure it out first because I'm gonna pour all this into it. So intentionality. I find, and I'm guilty. This is as much therapy as it is talking about people out there. I'm sure a lot of people can identify. You've been stuck on analysis.
So we had this. First off, I think that action will be the cure of all things procrastination. But we had this speaker come in and talk to our team, our athletes, a few months ago, nearly a year ago. His name's Donald Miller, author, entrepreneur, leader. And he talked about these three components to maintaining momentum and acting on a decision. And the first is you have to have curiosity. So the first step is there's something that you are curious about. Let's put it in context of a marathon. I'm curious and interested to know if I can run 26.2 miles. And then there is the second stage is education. You go out, you educate yourself of here's the shoes I need, here's a training plan I need, here's how I use nutrition to fuel my training. I have 16 weeks until this race. Here's from point A to point B what I need to do to run 26.2 miles. And then that third component is commitment. That is the action of saying, I'm going to do this. Here's the plan. Now I'm going to go execute. If you apply those three ingredients to everything that you do or want to do, it is a step-by-step process of I'm curious, I'm interested. Now I need to go learn, and now I need to commit. That commitment in itself will eliminate the fear of any procrastination, and you will make progress. You will maintain momentum because you've just followed those three steps.
Yeah, and I've found that action produces clarity. And, you can be stuck on analysis for a long time, and then you start doing. Just do, and then you refine, you pivot, you have revelations about what it is you want to do. Much easier through the process of action than through sitting there with analysis. You're going to find out in mile 5 a lot more about whether you want to run a marathon than you will by never starting.
Well, I think most people, that's the best part about the marathon is if you run your first marathon, mile 16, 17, 18 is a lot of regret of signing up for that marathon, but you learn from that race.
Yeah.
It's like that's part of the process. And I believe that most people, and this has never been one of my problems, so I'm grateful for this, but a lot of people want to perfect something before moving on to the next. And sometimes it's better to just get the job done and then move on and keep making progress. So progress over perfection.
Well, we talked a lot about Nick and his career, but it's all also part of this, like he said, not this action, but this guiding force in life. Go one more, which he's written about. Find the clarity to make intentional life-changing choices in Go One More by Nick Bare. Also, check him out on YouTube. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Nick. Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, there he goes. Check out that book, Go One More by Nick Bare. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on Will Cain Country. We appreciate you hanging out with us today. If you liked it, we hope you leave a comment. YouTube, Facebook. We hope you subscribe. Apple, Spotify. See you again next time.